Hi, Chemaine. How are you? I pushed the record button and it didn't go through all the way, so now I'm I'm a newbie at this. Welcome to the Plat Wellness Podcast Series number two. And to our listeners today, I'm super excited to have Chemaine. Chemaine, you reached out to Dr. Platt like 2 or 3 years ago, I believe. I think it was like three
Three,
three years
yeah.
ago, and he jumped on your podcast, and then I got involved in running the company as CEO. And as many people may know, he has retired from the day to day, but he is still available for advice through email and whatnot. I know you had him recently on a podcast, but he's retired, and but this is his passion, and I wanted to connect with you and as our new platform and concentrate on have you tell your story on weight loss.
Mhm.
And let me introduce everyone to our listeners on Chemaine and her background and her transitional journey and how you got into coaching. But you are a health and fitness nutritional expert, and your background is in biology and nutritional therapy, and you have a lot of certifications: Pilates instructor, nutritional therapist, personal trainer. And what makes her unique is that she has gone through this transformation herself, and she's created a very dynamic business. And you are a pillar in the community where you live in Canada, right? In Alberta, Airedale. Is it
Hmm.
Airedale? Okay. I always want to go visit there one day. I'm going to have to look you up and we'll have to get
Oh
together.
yeah, anytime you're in Calgary,
Yeah,
just hit me up.
especially now in Palm Desert, it was 108 yesterday. So I
Oof.
literally got in my car and turned on the air conditioning just to go 50 feet to my mailbox. Anyway, you are a lifelong biohacker and a learner and a researcher, and I can tell you that firsthand. She is constantly looking for information. You've been, you have, if anyone wants to go visit Chemaine, Find Your Model Health. Is that the name of your website?
The podcast is Find Your Model Health, and then the
Find Your
website
Model
is
Health.
Chemaine's Model
Right.
Health. Yeah.
You have some amazing, amazing speakers on there. So, a big resource of information, not only on your podcast, but on your websites. And we are very honored to have you part of our tribe, or
I
maybe we're
am.
part of your tribe.
No, I'm
So,
part of your tribe.
but anyway, you're a delight to work with. And if anyone ever, you're just a resource of information. And you also have a lot of detox courses that you can download and classes. I think you're having one up in September, right? And like kind of a whole
There's a
program.
lot going on
A lot
right
going on,
now.
a lot going on. She's busy, and you have two kids, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And two
Two
adorable
kids and
two
a
sons.
kitty. No, my kids are not adorable anymore now. My
No?
kids are grown up. One is 21 and one is
Oh.
13.
Oh, well, 13 and 12. Well, they're always going to be your adorable
Oh,
babies,
they're
right?
my babies, but
Yeah.
they're babies that talk
Mhm.
back.
That's right. Well, that's they're doing their job.
But they're
But
great.
anyway,
They help to mold me into who I am today.
absolutely, absolutely. Well, Shemaine, anyway, we're going to talk about weight loss, and I wanted you to start off with your journey and how you lost, it was like 165 pounds after having a baby. How did
Yeah.
you do that? And now you're incorporating nutrition and hormones through perimenopause. So this is a huge topic, and a lot of women really want to hear about your journey and how you lost all that weight, how you were able to maintain it, and how you're incorporating hormones into your routine as well. So,
Hmm.
how did you?
So it all started back in 2006. I was a wild child. I grew up in Dublin, Ireland,
Uh-huh.
and I was like crazy, just crazy. And God decided, okay, it's time to intervene. And that's where I
Yeah.
got pregnant really young with my 21-year-old. And that then changed the trajectory of my life.
Mm-hmm.
So at that stage, post baby, I was my heaviest weight. I was 280 pounds. And for context, I'm only 5'5", so I'm not tall. So I looked really, really big. And I was miserable. I was unhappy. I was bullied. I would binge eat. It was just, it's
Mhm.
one of those things that I say to my clients or people that interview me or ask me. It's like, unless you've been there, you can't really explain what that feeling is like, where you're so unhappy, you hate yourself, you're
Mhm.
pulling at your rolls of fat, you can't wear any clothes. And I just hit rock bottom. I hit absolute rock bottom. My sister convinced me to go to a Weight Watchers
Mhm.
meeting,
Yeah.
and we were very young. She's
Mhm.
young too, so
Yeah.
she was trying to help me, and I went, and that was the night I found out I was 280 pounds, and I remember going home and crying and just praying to God, like, I will never go back. That was my rock bottom, and I had a new baby
Mhm.
beside me, and I'll
Mhm.
be bold and say I was fat and miserable. I was so unhappy, and I swore I would never go back. And then I kept going. The first week I lost 8 pounds, and I kept going and going and going. And then within a year and a half, I had lost 150 pounds. So with Weight
Wow.
Watchers, they give you your certificates and your
Right.
stone. Like, it's very motivating. I
Yes.
can never put Weight Watchers down. The accountability is next level, and that's
Yeah.
what most people need. And then I went
My mom
on
and
to,
I went there once. I remember when I was in high school. Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think because I was bullied so much in the home, like my
Mhm.
parents, my siblings, just
Yeah.
everyone,
Yeah.
that having that external support. And like my
Right.
Weight Watchers leader, I very much embody a lot of how she worked. I suppose I could call her my mentor. She would message me all the time. She would bring me recipes, resources, little motivational gifts. Like, she was a huge part of my success. And
Mhm.
that made me realize how important that accountability and support is, because you can work with the
Absolutely.
best person in the world, the
Very
best
true.
scientist or nutrition PhD, and unless you
Mhm.
have that support
Yeah.
and that connection where you feel like someone believes in me and I can
Right.
do this, it's going to be really hard for you to get the
I
results.
agree. I mean, I can't tell you. I have about three different courses that are sitting in my inbox that I need to that are self-paced, and
Mhm.
I so easily distracted. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh well, sometimes I'd rather do my taxes than go through another course. I mean, but I mean, and that's the importance of having a coach to
Yes.
see you through it, just for that accountability. I agree 100%.
It's the same with personal training. Most people
Mhm.
know what to do.
Yeah,
But a personal trainer's job is to make sure you show up and do it. That's
absolutely.
all.
Right,
That's why we
right,
pay people.
right.
I can give you answers and
Yeah.
give you direction, but the truth is, my
Hmm.
job is to make sure you're doing what you're supposed to do.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
so then that just continued, and I got into like fitness, and I figured I incorporated exercise as I was doing
Hmm.
my weight loss, and my dad was always into bodybuilding, so I'd always been exposed to it, and I noticed I had a knack for it. And then I got into it,
Yeah.
and then I just kept going, personal training next. Then I got
I,
certified as
yeah.
Pilates.
You have pretty big guns. I was noticing that on your social posts.
Yeah, they're
I'm like,
pretty
wow, look
impressive.
at Chemaine. I mean, you were really strong lifting yourself up on these bars. And I'm like, oh, girl.
Yeah, I'm trying
Yeah,
to share some more
yeah,
videos rather than just hiding
yeah,
behind the thing. It's just because
yeah.
I'm so busy, but
But no,
I
it's
do
great.
practice what I preach. That's
Yeah,
how I say. I'm not one of these who preaches and doesn't do it. I
right.
do the same way I use plat progesterone. Like, if
Yeah,
I recommend it, I'm
yeah.
probably doing it.
Well, absolutely. And we prefer that. We don't, I mean, that we have to, that's the endorsement.
Mhm.
Um, so, and I don't want to cut you off at all, but I would do want to explain how important weightlifting is for women going through perimenopause and menopause. And I know that that is really helpful in hormone balancing as well. So, what is your take on that?
It is really important. I mean, and we both know that. a pinch of prevention is worth an ounce of cure. The
Absolutely.
earlier a woman can start doing it, the better. That's always going to be the case. I think we
Hmm.
were discussing before the conversation around osteoporosis and bone degeneration.
Mm.
And there's a lot of talk around that now with the perimenopause conversation and hormones. And oh,
Hmm.
you need to
Hmm.
years. So if you lift weights, I'm not saying it won't make a difference now,
Hmm.
but a lot of that damage was already caused.
Right.
So depending on your training protocol and how your program is designed and your
Hmm.
nutrition, of course, yeah, you can rebuild bone. You can.
Hmm.
We know that we release and utilize stem cells right up until the day we die. You
Hmm.
can, and we see this in the literature that men and I would argue even women, if things are done right, continue to build muscle right up until the day they die. A
Hmm.
lot of the time, people lose all of this. Again, I would argue is a lot of excuses that we give ourselves. Oh, I'm getting too old. I can't do this and all that. And we tend to hold ourselves back as humans. But weightlifting, putting that force, because that's the idea, is when
Hmm.
we put force on the bones,
Right.
we cause a stress to the bone, which then causes the
Mhm.
bones to compress.
Right.
And that then sends a signal that when you go asleep, those
Right.
stem cells are going to come out of the bone marrow, and your body's basically going to say, hey, we've incurred a stress or an injury here today. You need to go there and
Right.
heal and fix. So that's really how the signaling mechanism like works. But you,
Hmm.
that whole idea that I think people hear all the time, you have to weightlift for bones. It's true, but how does it work? Well, really, you're trying to
Hmm.
put force onto the bones as if you're trying to press down on the bones. So when you see women, and I'm in now the gym all the time, and it's great to see women in the gym, but most women are still not lifting heavy enough. They're doing
Right.
5 pound bicep curls.
Hmm.
No, you need to be at 20. Like you need to be
Hmm.
more. They're
Right.
doing 25 pound chest press. Do
Right.
more. Like
Right.
do ask someone to spot you, ask someone to help you because
Right.
that's the caveat as well, is
Hmm.
it needs to be heavier because again, we're trying to put that load of
Yeah.
force onto the bones. But if you can start early, start as
Right.
early as possible, that's amazing. But it doesn't
Right.
mean you can't fix
Right.
some of the damage because you
Right.
totally can. And I get this question all the time. It's just you have to be following a good plan.
So let me just have a little side note here with the difference between estrogen and progesterone. Estrogen, it gets the most talk and highlight about preventing bone loss, which is true. However, once you pass that and you're in menopause, it's really great to have that in perimenopause, right? But progesterone actually stimulates the osteoblasts for bone regeneration. So estrogen's great for prevention and progesterone is great for regenerating bone,
Mhm.
which I don't think a lot of people know that. And so I
They
wanted to
don't,
point that
because
out.
as you and I both know, most of the conversation is
Hmm.
still, and if I'm so bold to say, getting worse around estrogen. That
Hmm.
conversation is kind of out of control.
Hmm.
Estrogen is a growth hormone, it's a growth
Right.
factor. So
Hmm.
it would make sense that estrogen is involved in that bone growth.
Right.
But then there's that sweet spot
Right.
where if the estrogen is out of control or your estrogen is too high, which it is with most women,
Hmm.
now that estrogen has become a stress hormone, that
Right.
estrogen increases systemic inflammation in the body. Inflammation causes the body to become acidic.
Right.
When the body becomes acidic, we start like as I've described it to my clients, like you remember the old Aliens movies with Sigourney Weaver, and
Hmm.
the alien's blood was like acid, and when she shot it, it
Mm.
burned through the floor. Well,
Wow.
that's what happens when the body becomes acidic. You start to burn into your bones, and this is where we see that like bone breakdown, leaching of
Right.
calcium because the body is now so acidic. So
Right.
it's like it's a balancing act
It
for
really is.
sure. but that's not being discussed.
Right.
That's
Right.
not where you kind of hear the one-sided story.
Right, exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah. Balancing is so that would be a good segue to talk about how you incorporate hormone therapy into your nutritional coaching. And from that we can talk about how you manage weight, which a lot of women seem to gain weight once they start if they're not doing it right. So, how do you
Mm.
incorporate? So, you have a nutritional, you have your personal training business, but you also have your nutritional business. So, people traditionally come to you and say, Chemaine, I want to lose 30, 50 pounds. I want to get in shape. I want to eat better. I want to feel better. And they're in perimenopause. What do you do?
So generally, for the last few years, I have become the person, at least in my location, that um, I suppose you'd say is the last resort. Like they've worked with everyone else and nobody can help them,
Mhm.
because it's not usually just weight loss. There's other conditions as well, be that diabetes or MS or even ALS. I work with people with cancer, like all different categories. So it's
Mhm.
usually like
Wow.
they need weight loss because of this, this, and this. And now there are some people who just want to look better for their vacation, and they're
Mhm.
obviously the easier clients.
Mhm.
Um, but I get a lot of the like harder
Mhm.
clients, shall we say. And at that stage, there usually is a hormone issue
Mhm.
because the majority of these autoimmune issues, or be it even insomnia, inflammatory disorders, new ADHD diagnoses, which,
Right.
like Dr. Platt says, I'm not fully
Mhm.
convinced that is the diagnosis and it's not just the adrenaline. So at that
Mhm.
stage, there's always a hormone issue. And even if it's
Right.
not the sex hormones, it's going to be thyroid, it's going to be insulin, it's going
Mhm.
to be leptin, ghrelin, like
Right.
the other hormones. Because unfortunately, the way the conversation has gone recently, every time we speak about hormones, people just think of the sex hormones.
Right.
They forget all the other like 45 hormones
There's a
that
lot
we
of
have.
hormones, yeah, and they all
Yeah.
have to work synergistically together. And if one goes, if you're, if you're running chronically stressed out, you're going to have glucose issues and insulin issues and pre-diabetic, and then it gets worse and worse. And if you're not addressing that underlying issue, you can't just slap on hormones and have it work. You have to
I
work with,
see huge issues with leptin, which doesn't get spoken about enough. I think it was Dr. Gundry who used to discuss leptin resistance.
right, right,
And I learned a lot about that from him maybe 8 years ago or something
right.
like
I
that.
remember he came out
But
with that.
I still see that everywhere. Like, for example, a new client last week said, "Can you explain to me how?" like I everything just tastes so good and I can't stop eating and I can't stop eating. So I end up having to explain to her, like, it's not that you have a problem, it's that there's a missignaling there between the hormones, and
Mhm.
explaining to her, like, leptin, which gets released from our stomach and our fat cells, it's not hitting your brain properly, it's being blocked because of insulin. And trying to help her. And then there's the whole taste buds conversation as well there. But that doesn't get spoken about enough, I don't think, because we speak about insulin all the time, but insulin directly will block leptin. As I say to my clients, insulin basically says to leptin, shh, nobody's listening to you. Nobody cares.
Right,
So that
right.
leptin never hits your brain. So you don't feel satiated and you just keep eating and eating and eating. And we've all
Wow.
experienced that. You're like, you've had a whole medium Domino's pizza and you're like, I
Yeah.
can still have some ice cream. Like, where am I putting all of this food? But you
Wow.
just don't feel satiated because leptin is completely blocked.
Wow.
And this is a conversation that nobody's having. So now people just think I'm
Yeah.
addicted to sugar or I can't
Right.
stop eating.
Right.
No,
Right.
there's a hormone issue there. So
Right.
now we have to balance that. And that's where the hormone conversation usually starts. I know like Carol, we tend to start with the blood sugars and the inflammation and
Right.
then work from there. So I'll usually start with that and make sure we've
Right.
optimized sleep and then supplements. And then usually about the 5 week mark of working with a client,
Mhm.
unless I've seen it's absolutely necessary or there's already like an obvious hormone issue, then I will circle back to hormones, say, okay, we've done the base work now. We've done the
Right.
foundational stuff. We got you sleeping, you're walking regularly.
Right.
Now I think it's time to bring in some progesterone
Right.
because I think it will help with your anxiety, your whatever it may be. And
Right.
now obviously there's individualities. Some people
Hmm.
might need
Hmm. You're pausing for some
because
reason.
she challenges me. But
Yeah.
she when we started working together, I think last October, come Christmas, she's like, Chemaine, I need help. I need help. Every time I start my period, I just want to kill everyone in sight. She's like, I'm a nightmare to be around. I hate everyone. And she was angry, like really, really, really
Yeah.
angry. And she
Right.
would
Right.
take it out on me, and I'd be
Oh
like, look,
gosh.
I understand, so I'm gonna let you away with that. But
Yeah.
I think you need some
Yeah.
progesterone.
Yeah.
So we got her on progesterone, and at
Yeah.
this stage, she's using a combination of oral and Dr. Platt's progesterone.
Uh,
She's at like she averages 600 milligrams a day, and that's enough for
wow.
her to feel normal
Right.
and joyful at times. Like
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
she's great, but she can be a bit cranky. But that progesterone, like, literally kept her out of jail.
Yes. Yes. It was funny. There was a social post of a man. It was really funny. And he was like, I'm a prisoner in my own house. There's a shortage of estrogen patches, and I don't know what to do.
Yeah, hold on,
I
let
mean,
me post you some
he was like,
progesterone.
help, help, help.
Yeah.
It was really funny. Well, that's a little bit of a good segue with now that we're talking about hormones and weight loss. So basically what you're saying is you really need to look at the markers. You know, you need to do some testing about your metabolic. Um, and we can put that in our transcript as well, or put some links on what kind of testing you usually recommend.
Can we just
But
touch on that for a minute? Because,
yeah.
and I know Carol agrees with me, and a
Hmm.
lot of us at this stage are like, testing has become so overutilized and
Yes.
even overrated at this stage that women are forgetting that your body is telling you way more than any test would. I saw a comment recently on an Airdrie post, like the moms group here, and she's like, can someone explain to me why every time I go to my doctor, no matter what it is, my leg is falling off. Oh, you need Ozempic. My hair is falling out. Oh, you need Ozempic. So that's always the answer to them is
Mm.
you need Ozempic. But on the other side, we also have every time someone gets a blood panel done, they're told everything's fine. It's normal. But
Right.
you're like, no, it couldn't be. I haven't
Right.
slept in 7 days. I am continuously bleeding. I'm crying randomly, and I keep gaining weight. But the doctor's telling you it's fine. So testing is not always the answer. Having someone
Absolutely.
that will listen to you and that has experience, like
Right.
Carol, for example, that can connect the dots and see, well, your
Yes.
symptoms are saying this is what's happening. And a
Right.
lot of the time, when you do consultations or meet and greets or whatever, as the woman is speaking, she's
Mm.
giving you the answers. Like the answers
Right.
are right there. And a lot of this does not show up on tests
You're
at
right.
all. So, yeah.
Absolutely, 100%. In fact, I asked Carol Peterson, for our listeners, is what we refer to. She's part of our tribe, and she was my podcast one, and also a colleague of Dr. Platt's and a hormone coach in Toronto. And I asked her to guest blog on testing because so many of our customers are like, but my doctor says my estrogen levels are low, and then they get on estrogen and they're out of the roof. And, there's a lot of, you know, people don't realize that you're still making estrogen, and it's only circulating estrogen. It's not even considering what's attached to your tissues. And also we touched upon like DHEA levels. Carol was pointing out that the levels on a lab report or based on your age. These are normal,
Yeah,
DHA
yeah.
levels for your age, but you want to have a DH level as a 20-year-old.
Yeah.
So, meanwhile, you're looking at that and going, oh, my DH levels are normal. Well, they're not optimal. They're
Yeah, this is
normal in a
the
range
normal
based,
range. Yeah.
right, that's based on what these protocols that they establish as normal for your age within that. And then there's of course a lot of talk about normal TCH levels for your thyroid, and meanwhile, your T4 is not converting. So,
And that's so complicated once you
right,
start looking at thyroid.
so
I mean,
complicated.
the truth is, and I have a lot of experience with thyroid. I have hypothyroid. I take natural desiccated thyroid. I take D3 or T3. I have a lot of experience with
Hmm.
it. And even then, we're all just like, I don't know, let's just see what happens.
Right, right,
Because you don't know, because nobody's doing biopsies.
right,
Like it's
right,
unless you're involved in some huge um, NIH study, you're
right,
not going to get a biopsy. So you're
right,
never going to know
right,
exactly what is happening.
right,
Even if the levels look good on a blood panel, you
right.
still don't know. Like there's so much conversation here and it goes so
Hmm.
deep, but thyroid is really complicated. So your best answer is if you're doing a protocol with someone and you're giving them thyroid or you're doing a nutritional
Hmm.
plan and they start to feel good, they're losing weight, they have
Hmm.
more energy, their hair is growing back.
Right.
We don't
Great,
need to test. It's
great.
working. Let's keep doing
Let's
this.
keep doing it.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I know Dr. Platt had said, uh, I like to work with the patient, not lab tests. And now, the more and more I learn and the more I'm involved in this business, I totally understand that. And, my doctor, who I got a new doctor, and I was like, hey, look, I just want to, I have, I work in a wellness business and hormones. So if you're going to do labs, I want to tell you what I want, and I'll interpret it.
Yeah.
And he was like,
Yeah.
okay. I go, I just want to tell you right off the bat, because if we can't agree on that, then I can move on. I don't want to waste your time.
Yeah, I just need you to
Because
give me a
yeah,
requisition.
like, I don't need you to interpret it. And because I said I wanted to reverse T3, he goes, I never order those. And I go, that's okay. Because he goes, I don't know how, honestly, Annette, I don't know how to interpret it. So
Yeah.
I never run reverse T3. And I'm like, well, that shows you your T4 is not converting, it's dumping into reverse T3. So there's an issue. And my TH level, TCH, my thyroid stimulating hormone, TSH levels are always normal, even
Mm.
if my T4 is not converting. So they can say, oh, yeah, well, he goes, I just run TSH. And I go, well, I want to run this, this, and this, and this, because it's giving me a whole picture. He goes, and that we don't get trained on that. Well,
No,
we
and
get
I
like
kind of
a
feel
one
bad
week of
for them.
training and medical, so you really need someone who specializes in hormones. And it's not part of the standard medical treatment.
And a
And
lot of doctors I find now, I collaborate with an amazing doctor here, and he
mhm,
initially reached out to me because he had listened to my podcasts, which is amazing because by the time he messaged me, he
mhm,
already had that trust. His wife had
right.
listened to me, so of course she had influence, and he was
Mhm.
just up the road. So we did a
That's great.
meeting, and it was amazing. He was sending me clients, and I'm sending him patients,
Okay.
and he would test anything without questioning me. And he
Right.
will prescribe anything. If my client goes to him and he's like, okay, he'll call me
Mhm,
when she's sitting there and Chemaine, her
mhm.
bloods are here. What do you think of this? What would you like? And I'll say,
Perfect.
well, let's do this, this, and this. And
Wow.
he will never second guess. But other doctors, they almost get offended if you're working with someone
Yes.
else for help. I mean, aren't we all supposed to be helping people?
Right.
But they don't like their toes being stepped on.
They
And I'm like, I'm
don't.
not stepping on your toes. I'm just trying to help this person. But there's a
You're
lot of doctors that do not like that.
very much so. I have experienced that. If you question them at all, and that's why I had to have that conversation with my doctor. And I encourage our listeners to find the right fit for you. Don't just switch doctors and expect miracles. You need to have a consult. Ask for a consult and say, I just want to make sure that we are a good fit. And that way before you spend a lot of time and money and effort, find someone who will listen to you and will work with you.
And
And
if I'll just add, if not, but especially because Canada is a lot smaller than
Hmm.
American population wise and resource like health resource wise. So if you're here in Canada and we all find this one amazing doctor and we all
Right,
want to work with this doctor and now this doctor can't take on any more patients.
right,
So what do you do? Like, because
right.
there's only a handful of them. So then at
Mhm.
least you root out someone who can help you source maybe ordering a
Mhm.
blood panel online. And
Right.
then they will help you decipher it. And then worst case scenario, if you do need hormones
Hmm.
or thyroid or something and you can't get a prescription, then that person should be able to
Right,
direct you to
right.
yourselves for hormones or maybe Reina for thyroid or something like
Hmm.
there are ways that you can get help, but to
Right.
think you can do it alone, I think is a little bit crazy nowadays because there's too much information out there.
There is, and it's very, very confusing. And we are trying to boil that down for everyone. Basically, what we are addressing here is that, even though testing labs, traditional testing labs, they don't give you, but you need to kind of have a full picture, like, um, test your methylation, test your insulin, test your cortisol, test your, just to do the sex hormones. And we were discussing this earlier before we jumped on the recording. When you talk, when people mention hormones, they immediately just go to sex hormones, but there's like a gazillion different type of hormones that we have to consider that are all part of the picture that act as a domino effect.
Mhm.
And so there's Dutch, there's blood, there's serum, there's, all different types of tests that, based on your symptoms, you're going to recommend, and then you'll get a picture. And at least you have a baseline to then go forward. I mean, you may not even need hormone balancing yet, so just because you feel like you're reaching perimenopause, you need to really look at the full picture before you start a regime to really understand, because you can't just put a band-aid on something. Is that
Mhm.
correct?
There is value to testing for sure. I'm not saying it's a
Mhm.
waste. There's a lot. I really am fond of like the lipid panel. I think it's very important
Right.
because you make hormones out of cholesterol. So if
Exactly.
your cholesterol is not being converted,
Absolutely.
you can pretty much guess you have a hormone issue.
Yes.
So if your cholesterol is high, well, then I can't be making hormones if my cholesterol is just sitting there doing nothing.
Right.
So, and then, like you said, methylation. We can look at creatinine. If the creatinine is
Hmm.
in a good place, then great. If it's not, well, maybe I'm not methylating properly.
Hmm.
So, if you can translate some of the basic ones, it can be really helpful. And obviously, if someone has an infection, I saw a lady earlier and her lymphocytes were sky high, and then her CRP was high. I'm like, it looks like you have an infection. That's why your CRP is so high. So sometimes the basic ones can be more helpful than the very
Hmm.
complicated ones, I think, as
Hmm.
long as you know how to read them.
Exactly. Exactly. There's some value in getting the full picture and then piecing that together. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go to the question that we get a lot here at Plet Wellness, like, oh, I just started BHT and I gained 15 pounds. I can't get it off, and they get frustrated because, they're blaming it on the hormone therapy. And, but I wanted to get your take on that because I think it's really about the ratio and the balancing and getting it right. Um,
Mhm.
so tell me about, have you had patients or clients that come to you and you get them on hormone therapy replacement and then they start gaining weight, or maybe they
Okay,
just
so
have, maybe they come to you as a last resort and say, I've done this and this, and now what can I do? So
so
how do you
okay,
approach
I'll be
that?
honest. I'll be honest. The majority of the people I work with, my clients, by the time I've put them on progesterone, I've already refined their nutrition and all so much that no, they don't gain weight. They
Okay,
don't. But
great.
I do see this all the time
Yeah.
in like the estrogen dominance group and in the different threads. I
Yes.
see it all the time.
Hmm.
And a lot of the time, because weight loss is my thing, it's where I started. I've been doing this for 20 years. I've worked with thousands of people everywhere because I started in Ireland and then I moved here.
Hmm.
That I like to think I know a lot about weight loss, but
Yeah.
then with all the different trends over the years, there's been so much misconstrued information. And I
Hmm.
think this is a valuable part of the conversation because
Right.
Carol will focus on the hormones and you got, but this is where like understanding that regardless of what way you look at it, calories do matter. The
Hmm.
law of thermodynamics, it matters. So if you want to lose weight, there has to be a calorie deficit. And nobody likes to hear that anymore because of all the talk around keto and carnivore. They really started saying a lot of quality over quantity. And what I've
Hmm.
always said is no, everything matters. All of it matters. Quality,
Hmm.
quantity, calories, like thyroid, the whole lot matters.
Hmm.
You can't be naive and say, oh, calories don't matter when they
Right.
do. This is physics. This
Right.
is like the law of physics. This is how it works. There's no like shortcut there. We haven't
Mhm.
changed that in like the last couple of thousand years. We're still very primal, and calories do matter. And people don't like to hear that. So if you see a comment, which is really common, where, oh,
Mhm.
I've started progesterone or I've started this and I'm gaining weight,
Mhm.
but usually there's a caveat. They'll usually
Mhm.
say, I'm also eating well, I exercise regularly.
Mhm.
Um, some woman earlier says she's in a calorie deficit, and I said, well, how do you know you're in a calorie deficit?
Mhm.
Because realistically, if you're not losing weight or you're gaining weight, you're not in a calorie deficit, and maybe you're overestimating your
Mhm.
basal metabolic rate, or you're underestimating what you're actually eating or how your calorie expenditure is looking. So let's say all things are true and this woman is eating really healthy and she should be in a calorie deficit and sleep is good and her steps are good. If everything is good, which in my experience, most of the time, that's not true. It's
Mhm.
not. There's usually something, but let's just say it all is good. And now you start progesterone
Mhm.
and you start gaining weight.
Mhm.
Well, then what else is happening there? Because
Right.
theoretically, progesterone is pro-thyroid, it's pro-metabolic. We see
Right.
this when you take your basal morning temperature. If you start using progesterone, your temperature will go up. It's night and day. You can see it.
What
The
is the
same with
temperature? What should be the temperature in the morning if
because over the last couple of decades, the literature has shown that our baseline, like human metabolic temperature, it
Mhm.
has dropped by like a half a degree or something. So it is lower than it was 100 years ago or 200 years ago. So the general guideline is that upon waking, you should be 36.8 degrees Celsius. So I don't know what that is Fahrenheit. I would have to convert it, but I use
Okay.
Celsius.
Okay.
So, but there's so many different variables. If someone
Mhm.
is under eating, if they're inflamed, they didn't sleep well, they're in the start of their menstrual cycle because
Mhm.
estrogen is anti-thyroid. So
Yeah.
estrogen will slow down your metabolic rate and estrogen drops core temperature and it can be quite drastic as well.
Mhm.
It's quite obvious. So you can see that, but generally it should be 36.8. But I tend to be a little bit more lenient with my clients and say, well, if I see you wake up and you're
Mhm.
36.52 or 36.5, and then I see the temperature continue to increase as the day has gone on
Mhm.
with food and activity, then I'm happy enough with that.
Mhm.
Most people tend to not hit 36.8 unless they're taking a lot of thyroid.
I'm doing ChatGPT right now.
Mhm.
Fahrenheit.
It's like 98.6, I think.
Yeah. So what would you say the ideal is 30 what?
36.8.
Okay. Let's see what it says. 98.2. So 36.8 Celsius equals 98.2.
Yeah, so
Longitude,
that's where
decimal, around there.
ideally,
Yeah.
but most people rarely hit that again unless
Yeah.
they're taking a lot of T3,
Right.
which does happen. I can
Yeah.
take a decent amount of T3 and wake up and see that. And you feel it though. You feel warmer overall. But
Interesting.
as it then relates to the weight gain, if the progesterone is now causing you to gain weight, and let's say this is truth, that it is the progesterone and it's
Mhm.
not because you've had increased hunger and you haven't
Mhm.
recognized it, or like one thing in that we know
Mhm.
progesterone does is progesterone helps us get into deep sleep.
Right.
And if someone is not used to sleeping very well and now they start sleeping well, that person will generally feel more tired than good while their circadian rhythm readapts to this new like rhythm. Usually like your body's
Mhm.
like, oh, so this is how we're sleeping now, is it? But
Right.
that takes a few days. So people tend to
Right.
feel worse before they feel better.
Interesting. I did
When
not know that.
when that happens though, we all know
Mhm.
this. When are we more than likely to eat more or have cravings?
When
It's when we
we
feel
want,
more tired.
right, because you want to get like raise your sugar, you know?
Mhm.
Yes,
So
exactly.
was it that you started progesterone the last week or two, but you've also been sleeping better, but now you're more tired the next?
Mm-hmm. Right. I don't know if our listeners can see this, but this internet in our office, I think, in the afternoon.
Yeah. Maybe I was saying that maybe it's not a lot of extra food.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's a handful of nuts, maybe it's just
Right.
an extra bit of cheese or
Right.
whatever, but
Right.
it is also that idea of,
Right.
parents will say, picking off their kids' plate, oh, a little
Yeah.
bit won't hurt. No, a little bit won't hurt, but if you do it every day, it will hurt.
Yeah.
And then before you know it, they're up 2 pounds and they're blaming the progesterone. Maybe it wasn't that at all.
I know that progesterone helps with mood and sleep. It converts in the liver to allopregnanolone, which can it stimulates the GABA, and so and it can increase if you're doing too much progesterone or not the right balance. It can stimulate your appetite. So that's something to look at as well. But it's interesting that you said that. That's a new one for me, and I like that nugget, is that when you first starting and you're like starting to sleep well, you are adjusting. There's an adjustment period for
Mhm.
sure.
Oh, there is.
And yeah, with your circadian. And I will tell you, in order to help with sleep, I was doing 9 milligrams of melatonin, and that messed up my circadian
Hmm.
rhythm. And
Yeah,
and
I
to
will
the
microdose melatonin and
yeah,
it's literally half a milligram.
yeah, that's
Otherwise, I feel terrible.
yeah, yeah, and then I started to go into kind of a depression, kind of a what is life for? You know, I started to have
Uh-huh.
this thing in pit in my stomach, and then I realized that there was an article out about long-term use of progesterone, and I Googled it, and it can have that effect. And so I stopped it one, and the very next day I woke up with a smile on my face, and I'm like, oh my God, all this
That was
time
melatonin, yeah.
it was melatonin,
Mhm.
and I stopped it immediately.
Mhm.
But you know, your circadian rhythm is really, 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 really important to your mood, your energy, and everything. So you know, so as far as if somebody comes to you and they start progesterone and they start gaining a little weight, what do you tell them?
Well, I'll answer that while also commenting on the pregnenolone
Mm,
comment that you
yes,
made.
allopregnanolone.
So
Mhm.
and I brought this up with Carol Peterson, Dr.
Yes.
Brownstein, Dr. Rosensweet, Kitty Martone. I was like, I need your opinion. What happened
Yes,
here?
yes. Please
So
share that with us.
I was going through a very high period of stress and my sleep is generally amazing, but
Mhm.
I just couldn't sleep. I was exhausted. You know, where you're just so wired on adrenaline.
Yeah,
I could not sleep. So I'm like, okay, I'm desperate. I'm going to try pregnenolone. So I had got some
yes.
pregnenolone cream and it worked a charm. I had the best sleep ever.
Really?
But within 24 hours, I put on 8 pounds on the scale. My breasts swole up. Now, I don't get PMS. I don't ever get swollen breasts. I don't get like malaise or depression in PMS.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get any of that, but I
Mm-hmm.
did. and my breast like grew twice the size within 24 hours. I put on
Wow.
8 pounds. I was like, what is going on
You're
here?
very sensitive.
Yeah, I hadn't connected it to the allopregnanolone. So I used it again the next night and I started to feel worse and worse. And I remember going to the gym and doing a dead hang. If you know what a dead hang is, you're just hanging, holding on to bars.
Mhm.
And I started to doze off. That allopregnanolone was destroying me. So what happened
Wow.
was I am very sensitive to metal converting into estrogen. So I think
Yes.
because of the lifestyle I live and my nutrition, like I practice what I preach, that I very much have it under control a lot of the time.
Mhm.
But this really showed me that I was really sensitive to converting pregnenolone into
Yes.
estrogen. And
Yes.
my sister, who's the opposite of me, like she's not in my industry, she has
Mhm.
all the obvious PMS,
Right.
estrogen dominant symptoms. So I clearly still have it, but it's under control. So I stopped the allopregnanolone and
No, wait a
within a
minute. Let me just correct you. I'm sorry. Pregnenolone is what's converted in the
Yeah,
liver,
I stopped the
but the
pregnenolone.
pregnenolone
Yeah,
is
yeah,
what you are
yeah.
taking as a supplement. So I just wanted to distinct that, make a
Yeah, so I
distinction for
stopped the
everyone.
pregnenolone, and I think it took me a week or two, like a few
Mm.
days for the fluid, because it wasn't body fat. The fluid came off, the breasts went
Wow.
back down. But for me to feel myself again, it took me 2 to 4 weeks for them
Wow.
hormones to balance again. So then I get
What
every
was the milligram that you took of the pregnenolone?
It was a cream, and I think
Oh,
it's 50 milligrams. So in itself, that's pretty high.
yeah.
So
Wow.
Carol had discussed kind of the estrogen adrenaline pathway with me. Dr. Brownstein said, well, because I'm so young and I sleep very well regardless, that pregnenolone was already adding to my pregnenolone and it was just too much. It was
Too much.
overwhelming my
Yeah.
system. But I was clearly converting it to estrogen because I had all the symptoms of estrogen
Yeah.
dominance. So
Wow.
that was fine, lesson learned. I thought none
Yeah.
of it. A year later, at the start of this year, I've been dealing with some stuff and
Mhm.
I got some oral progesterone.
Oh, okay.
I do very, very well on topical
Wonderful.
progesterone. Like I use Platz, it's my favorite. Like I
Mhm.
respond really well to it.
Right.
But I felt I need a little bit of help. Things are getting rough.
Yeah.
So I took some oral progesterone, only
Mhm.
100 milligrams,
Mhm.
and the same thing happened. The same thing
Really?
happened. I converted it
Right.
to allopregnanolone, and
Right.
then I converted it downstream to estrogen.
Right.
Cravings went through the roof. I was
Wow.
fatigued. I just felt rubbish. And
Right.
I'm like, I still have the bottle of all the pills. I'm like, these are
Wow.
just for an emergency.
Right.
But again, back to the point, different people, we're going to metabolize it differently. And even if you
Correct.
think you have the best lifestyle, you eat the healthiest, oh, my detoxification is great, my guts are
Mhm.
great, your genetics don't care. Your
No.
genetics are still going to convert it the way you're
Right.
predisposed. So I do think that could be a factor in weight gain as
Mhm.
well. And then, of course, there's the dosages. But I do
Right.
have no issues with the progesterone cream.
Mhm.
But once it goes through my liver,
Yeah.
it's not a happy time for
Right.
anyone.
Well, I
That's
mean, cream does go through your liver eventually, but with oral, it does have the first pass goes
Mhm.
through your liver, which it converts to allopregnanolone through the glucagon. I can never say this, gluconeogenesis or whatever you call it.
Glucogia.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like glucogenesis or whatever. But yeah, your liver converts the progesterone with the first pass, and a lot of, and that's why they prescribe it to take at night. And you know, we get a lot of customers that say, "Well, I want to get off the oral and go on the cream," and then some women like to do both. But it is interesting because as far as weight gain is concerned, you are more likely to gain weight by taking oral progesterone, basically because it converts to allopregnanolone through the liver as the first pass. That
Yeah,
doesn't
and
mean that
then
everybody is going to react the
potentially
same.
to
Hmm.
yeah, potentially then down
Right,
the estrogen pathways. And
right,
even if not, the allopregnanolone will affect your hunger.
right. It
So it
will. It
will.
increases your appetite. Mhm.
And what we see, like back to like nutrition and physiology and
Mhm.
exercise, is that generally, unbeknownst to a person, if they are very tired, and now
Mhm.
that I'm saying this, you and the listeners are going to
Yeah.
recognize it more. It's like now I'm drawing your attention to, and you're like, yeah,
Yeah.
she's right.
Yeah.
When people are very tired, we tend to move less.
Yes.
It's more easy to convince yourself not to walk, but not only that,
Hmm.
what the literature shows us is that when we're very tired, for
Right.
whatever reason, our NEAT goes down. So NEAT
Right.
is our non-exercise activity expenditure, which accounts for up to 80% of our calorie expenditure each day.
Right.
That goes down significantly. So everything I'm doing with my hands or shaking my legs or moving my head, if I was
Fidgety.
exhausted, I'm not doing
Right.
that.
You're just going to be
And
lying there and, comatose. Yeah, exactly.
because we do that
Yeah.
subconsciously,
Yeah.
that we don't notice it unless someone draws our attention to
Right.
it.
I know I
So,
was watching
yeah.
like the Blue Zone, and we're going to wrap up real quick because we are at 50 minutes, and you and I said we were going to love on each other for the last 10 minutes. But this Blue Zone documentary that was in Japan and an island off Japan, and they don't go to gyms and work out or whatever, but they do eat on the floor on these cushions. So just getting up and down all the time, and growing their vegetables and bending over and pulling and all that kind of exercise. So if you're fatigued and you're just feeling very, so foggy and, tired, you're not going to do any of that.
Mhm.
So, and our daily lives really are, as people track their steps, right? They know that you are going to be, you're not going to be as active if you're just going to be so tired all the time. But
And that brings us back to the calorie deficit. This is a big
mhm.
part in that calorie deficit. So if weight
Right,
gain is an issue, we would be lying if we said calories don't matter because they definitely do.
right, right. And I know that, do you believe, I know we talked a little bit, just to wrap this up with intermittent fasting, because you and I had this conversation separately about, you know, the intermittent fasting, and you said I like to use, um, what did you say, timing?
Time restricted
Restricting,
feeding. Yeah.
time restricted feeding. And I love that because, one of the things that, Dr. Platt was, mentioning, I overheard him talk to someone, and, he says, I'm not a big fan of the keto and the intermittent fasting because, you're messing up with your blood sugars and they need to be steady if you are dealing with chronic stress. And so how do you deal with that when you have a client that comes to you and you put them on a diet? So what is that time restrictive
It's
eating
back
mean?
to that balancing act. It has to
Hmm.
be like you have to, I would argue, work with someone who understands anatomy and physiology because
Right.
very much the conversation is around intermittent fasting and that 8-16 window. You eat for 8 hours, you don't eat for 16. In the
Hmm.
literature, technically, that is not fasting. That's not considered fasting.
Hmm.
That is, and always was, considered time restricted feeding, where you were
Hmm.
just restricting your feeding hours. For something to be considered a fast, it usually has to be 20 hours or more. And
Hmm.
that's where that whole conversation around OMAD or 1 meal a day came in.
Hmm.
And people would fast for 20 hours and then they would just have 1 meal. And then we saw a lot of issues there because it's very hard to get all your good nutrition in that amount of time.
Right.
Because if you're eating a lot of steak and vegetables and apples, that stuff's going to fill you really fast. But if you're
Right.
eating 3 pizzas, you could probably eat that in an hour. That's easy enough.
Yeah.
But as far as it goes to stress, I do make sure my clients understand the language properly. Recently, I started working with a lady with ALS, and she's like, well, I heard you can't do intermittent fasting with ALS because it's too stressful for the body. And I'm like, well, let's clarify first. You're not doing intermittent fasting. And when you do eat, we're going to make sure you have an abundance of nutrition. And our goal really is to use this time restricted feeding so we can help your body to heal and what it's supposed to do. And that's not necessarily in the context of like apoptosis and cellular cleanup that you hear other practitioners talk about when they talk about fasting. This is more so how are we working with the body's already natural processes like the migrating motor complex, which most people have never heard of, which is like this little I will describe it as like a road sweeper. At the end of winter, all the roads get
Yeah.
swept. So we have one of these road sweepers in our gastrointestinal tract that cleans up all the debris and the waste and the inflammatory
Mhm.
molecules and everything. But that usually only becomes active after an hour and a half of eating. Now, if you're eating 6 meals a day, how is that process going to happen? It's not going
Mhm.
to happen.
Right. It's
And
just
if
too
you're
much.
yeah, and if you're eating at 9 p.m. and you're snacking on chips, but you go to bed at 9:30, how
Yeah.
is that process going to work? Because when
Right.
we sleep, as you know, and the
Right.
digestive system slows down. So what
Right.
would have taken you an hour to digest during the day now is taking up to 4 hours to digest when you're asleep. So
Right.
none of these natural processes can work. So it's not even like framing it as you're fasting because there's that kind of starvation connotation attached there. It
Hmm.
is more, we're going to restrict what time you feed in so that we can create structure in your days because most people do not have any structure. And then we can support the natural metabolic
Right.
processes that should be happening in anyway. We're going to work with them. So there is definitely a bigger conversation around
Right.
fasting. I would be lying if I said I don't have some clients that will do longer fasts. The
Hmm.
most I will let my client fast till is 40 hours, and that's
Hmm.
only if they've had a refeed before their fast. They will not fast before a refeed because that will cause a lot of damage, but we can fast after a refeed because ideally on a refeed, you've had this big bolus of calories and sugar so
Hmm.
that you've pretty much wrapped your body in this security blanket where when you do this longer fast, your metabolic processes they're
Hmm.
protected. So
Right.
there's no stress signal there because your body's like, it's okay. I had a load of food yesterday.
Right.
Like, we're
Right.
not in famine here. And
Right.
then you get away with those longer fasts after something like that. But not if you've been in a calorie deficit all week and now you're like, I'm going to do a 40-hour fast and then
Right.
I'm going to feast.
Right.
No, you're just, your body, your soul
Right.
is just going to leave your body if you do
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a complicated thing, but I mean, I know that with Dr. Platt's adrenaline dominance book and his meal plan to help manage adrenaline, he does, especially if somebody is like hypoglycemic, which I was, he put me on the progesterone cream to dose before I eat because progesterone can block the 5% blocks insulin and adrenaline is a precursor to insulin. So you want to dose the progesterone 1 to 3 minutes before you eat, so you're not, confusing your body when it wants to raise the blood sugar when you eat, the progesterones. So I actually, he moved me out of the hypoglycemic thing with, your choice of protein, breakfast, lunch, and dinner with low glycemic vegetable. And I was indulging in the MCT coconut oil, although I have some gut issues. So I went to just regular, um, virgin coconut oil because the MCT was irritating my
It
gut.
can be hard to digest,
Yeah, it can
especially if
be
you've low
hard to,
stomach acid.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And a lot of women who are older do that. So, but it's not, and then I would have a snack, 3 hours. Like if I started feeling like a little shaky, I would have maybe celery and peanut butter or an apple and a piece of cheese or something like that
Hmm.
before
Hmm.
lunch. But it's not like it wasn't a life sentence. I don't have that plan. It's not something that I would feel because I felt like my digestive system was constantly working.
And
So that
that's
was a
not
lot of
good.
snacking, it was a lot
Yeah.
of eating, and it was a lot of timing. And, that's just not possible with everybody to do that. But it got me out of a targeted situation
Hmm.
where
They
I
got you
felt.
making good choices and building good habits as well.
Right, right.
Hmm.
So, as far as dieting is concerned, when you say restricted timing, what does that mean to you? I mean, is it just totally individualized, or is it like a standard, you know, for the listeners here, if they were to say, okay, I'm going through perimenopause and menopause, and, how much should I eat? When should I eat?
It can be individualized, especially if there's thyroid issues, because we know
Mhm.
that thyroid is most active between 6 and 8 a.m. in the morning. So ideally, if I know my client has Hashimoto's or
Mhm.
hypothyroid or has had partial thyroidectomy.
Hmm.
I'm really encouraging them to have their first meal around 8 a.m.,
Hmm.
but
Or like
encouraging
an
is the
hour
key.
once they, like within an hour once they wake up.
Yeah, pretty much like, yeah, because as I'm saying, like I'm encouraging them, but if they have small kids, they have to get to school or
Hmm.
they have to drive an hour to work. There is a challenge there, but as much as
Hmm.
possible, I encourage them. I'm
Hmm.
not too much of a stickler on what we call that like morning window.
Hmm.
I like sometimes could care less because it really doesn't matter because most of your hormones are most active first thing in the morning
Right.
and you are more insulin sensitive first thing in the morning. The
Hmm.
important part that really is across the board for
Hmm.
most people. Now, there's again individualities, but for most people, because you mentioned perimenopause, and what's one of the key complaints in perimenopause is like sleeping and night sweats and all
Hmm.
that. So, if you can be done eating 4 hours before bed, but there's
Hmm.
context here that you have ate enough during the day, you're not
Right.
starving yourself during the day, your dinner was big enough, you feel satiated,
Hmm.
then most people will benefit from not eating 4 hours before bed. If I have a client now who, like you just said, she
Hmm.
has issues with hypoglycemia during the night,
Right.
and we tried her on MCT oil not last night, the night before,
Hmm.
and she got this kind of rotten taste in her stomach because she
Mm.
can't digest the MCT oil because
Yeah.
she has low stomach acid. So now our
Yeah.
other alternative is, well, let's bring in a teaspoon of honey in your tea instead.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
let's see how that influences your blood sugar. So there's always individualities, but generally
Right. Yeah.
before bed, provided they've had good nutrition and enough
Right.
calories during the day. That's
Yeah.
kind of the guidelines that we go
Yeah.
with.
Wonderful. Well, that's good. I like that. That sounds really good. I know, I start getting ready for bed around like 8:30. I start my routine,
Mhm.
and if I can fall asleep by 9:30, I'm very happy about that. So that means I really need to eat at like, 4, 5, or 6 latest, so yeah.
I've usually have my dinner between 3 and 4, which is easy for me because I'm
Yeah.
with clients all evening and you can't eat when you're with clients.
Right, right.
I know Dr. Gundry, he finishes eating at 2 p.m. I don't know what his evenings look like, but
Wow.
practice makes perfect. But we
Yeah.
know like this is the word is on the top of my tongue, but I can't think of it. But there's no argument here. The literature
Yeah.
is very, very clear on this.
Yeah.
For those who have an earlier feeding window or finish eating earlier in the day, they have better weight loss. They
Right.
maintain their weight loss easier, but
Right.
they also have better improvements in all metabolic health markers. Like when we
Wow.
see this, and this has been done over and over again, and it
Right.
always stands true. So I do think it's been part of why it's been easy for me to
Right.
maintain my weight because I tend to not eat after 4.
Right.
And I mean, at the weekends is a little different, but during the
Yeah.
week is easy. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it's funny because it reminds me of like, the early bird specials. As we get older, we're all like eating with all the older people in the early bird special thing.
They're onto
And they're
something.
like,
They
well,
know.
hey,
Yeah.
listen, there we are.
Yeah, and
We're
they're in
gonna
bed
join the
by
tribe.
8. Yeah, so they've got the best of both worlds. It really comes back to which ties in as we wrap up now to your fasting question.
Yeah.
When fasting kind of became so popular 8 to 10 years ago,
Mm.
initially, we had been told breakfast is your most important meal of the day.
Right.
And as you probably remember, that came from Kellogg's originally when they created
Wow.
cereal. They're like,
Wow.
Kellogg's is your breakfast most important meal of the
Right.
day. Choose
Oh my God.
Kellogg's. Like
Oh
that
my
was where
God.
that came from.
Wow.
But then
I
when
didn't realize that. That is so crazy. Wow.
yeah, they coined the term breakfast is the most important
Oh
meal of the
my
day.
God.
But then when the intermittent fasting trend took off,
Hmm.
then all the like health gurus and practitioners were saying, no, but we were lied to. That was Kellogg's. That was the cereal company, and
Hmm.
carbs and cereal's bad for you. And I'm not saying that's not true, but
Hmm. Yeah.
Then they started encouraging people to not eat breakfast and only eat lunch and dinner. So people started skipping breakfast because
Right.
now breakfast is not the most important meal of the day. But that was 8 to 10 years ago. And now we've got the longer term studies that show
Mhm.
us, well, actually, breakfast is the most important
Right.
meal of the day, just probably not Kellogg's.
Just not cereal that is
Yeah.
basically eating sugar. So, yeah, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
it is. It's interesting
Shemaine,
how it all comes back around.
it
It
does,
always
it
does.
does, it does, it does. Shemaine, I am so impressed. I'm so happy that we got to spend this time together, and I have another level of appreciation for you and what you do and the knowledge that you have. And I know that a lot of people in Canada probably really appreciate you and your knowledge and sharing all your knowledge because, like you said, even in the States now, it's very difficult to get a good doctor.
Mhm.
And there's such a shortage. And so we have to take that extra step to educate ourselves about we can't just be, realize, just, being fed this misinformation. We have to take our health in our own hands and having someone like you said, help you go through that process step by step is really, really, really important. And I wish we send a lot of people, what I want to do with our website eventually is have these practitioners where we can recommend people like you to go to that need a deeper dive. As Dr. Platt's not on the day to day with our business anymore, there's that missing link here. And, so I really think that this podcasts and education and having people like you coming on and sharing your wealth of knowledge, especially you have experienced it firsthand, which is really, really important. So, and then do you want to talk about anything that you are offering? I know that I was on your website and was so impressed with all the resources. I know you said you're getting your website
Mhm.
redone, but you said in September you're going to be doing another class. Did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so I initially created a program many moons ago, 10 years ago, and I launched it and I ran 17 rounds of it. And it was specifically to teach people about weight loss, circadian rhythm, how it all works, how to optimize their sleep and supplements.
Mm.
And that went 17 rounds. So I was doing 4 rounds a year and it sold out, but then it had outgrown itself and it was huge. So I tried to
Wow.
compress it. So then I changed that into my master's guide in 2021 and that sold out. And like I'm very blessed. They were great. But then
Mhm.
I was like, this is still too big. There's
Mm.
too much knowledge for people that
Yeah.
it became
Too much
overwhelming.
information. Yeah.
Mhm.
Hmm.
And as with Dr. Platt's help, and as
Mm.
I transitioned more through like I'm obviously getting older, not that much old, but I'm still getting older. And my clients, most of my clients
Yeah.
stay with me long term. They're getting older. I had no choice but to integrate a lot of hormones into my
Mhm.
teaching. So then at the start of this year, I launched my newest guide, which is the Nutrition and Hormones Guide for women.
Yes, I saw
So
that. I want to download
that's the
that.
one you're
Yeah.
referring to, and that
Yeah.
I'm only running it twice a year because I'm all about, because of my story, I don't just want you to get results. I want you to keep those results.
Hmm.
So that's why I kind of
Yeah.
cap it at twice a year that we're not just doing this, I'm going to
Yeah.
continue to support you. So the second round launches in September, and then the next one will be January. So
I want
it's
to
probably
sign up
just
for
going to be
that.
January.
I need to sign up for that.
Well, I'd
Or
be
maybe
happy
I
to
might
teach
hire you
you.
for a one-on-one. I
I'd be
need
happy
someone to
to teach
really
you.
slap me into shape.
Yeah, well, if you want someone to hold you accountable, you definitely hire an Irish person because they
That's
will
for
hold you
sure.
accountable.
I know you got to be ready.
There's no like wrapping you in cotton wool over here. That doesn't happen.
Oh, I love it. I love it. All right, Shemaine, can you tell me your website that you want people to go to check out your program? Because I
Yes,
know.
if people feel so inclined or
Mhm,
called to, my website is Chemaine's Model Health. My podcast is Find Your Model Health on all podcast platforms. And then my
mhm,
YouTube channel, which is growing, is just
mhm.
Chemaine's Model Health. And then I'm on like Instagram, Facebook.
Right.
I'm not on TikTok. Don't look for me there. I'm not getting sucked down that rabbit hole.
I know. I trust me. I have an account, and then because we're pseudopharmaceuticals, I couldn't, add my products to there. So I said, okay, fine, whatever. I don't have it either. I have an account, but I haven't posted on it. Anyway, I'm going to put all the links in the transcript of this podcast so you can find it there. But Chemaine, again, thank you so much for your time. We can go on and on and on, right? But you have your life and I have my life. We're going to get on
Just
with
about.
it. Yeah. All right. So next time, maybe in the fall, we can jump on real quick and we can do like a quick short. We don't have to do a whole hour or
Whatever you
whatever.
want.
Okay.
I'll
Sounds
always
good.
make time. Thank
Okay.
you, Annette.
All right. Thank you so much, doll. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Be
Bye.
well. Bye-bye.